We'll introduce you to a candidate for the state legislature. A son of a saint is making an impact, but we'll begin with Chris Nakamoto. Roll it, Kirk. Made it. All right, let's start off talking with Chris Nakamoto about one of the latest investigative team reports dealing with a current, recently suspended member of Louisiana State Police, Lieutenant James Jefferson. On February 5th, I believe he was arrested and charged with domestic violence and child endangerment. It has now come to light that maybe some of the details of how that night went aren't as accurate as we were initially told. What's the story?
Yeah, a lot of shaky details for sure. He's actually back at work. State Police cleared him, wound up doing their own independent investigation and found that, things weren't what they seemed.
Yeah.
And so they cleared him. He's back at work. And essentially what's really interesting is the officer involved in this case, the arresting officer who put the cuffs on James Jefferson, was actually put on an admin leave following the arrest. He also was investigated. There's an administrative investigation. He's currently on desk duty now, tied to some other instances of issues with other cases as they look back.
So the DA is declining to charge and has made it clear that at the hearing, the bond hearing in May, that he's going to make it clear there that he does not intend to charge Lieutenant Jefferson. What does that mean in the overall process with everything?
So essentially what that means is this case is over. So there were questions from the very beginning about whether or not there was even probable cause which existed to even arrest him that night.
Yeah.
And from what my sources are saying, there were some other supervisors that were there that night questioning whether or not there was probable cause to arrest James Jefferson.
I heard the same.
And from what we're hearing, there was an officer on scene that said, I'm doing it anyway. And so once James Jefferson was arrested, all these concerns kind of came to light. And so as the DA is reviewing all of this, they're having the same questions about probable cause, and that essentially led to their decision to say we're not pursuing these charges.
I mean, he was booked and put in irons and everything, and like you said, he's back on the job now. So once the hearing has come and gone, does this make this a dead issue, or do you believe there's going to be more to it?
So right now, in the eyes of the court, it's still showing up. So like if you go onto Court Connect or any sort of public court terminal, you can see the charges. But what the DA's office told us this week, they told us actually a couple of weeks ago, they intended to not pursue the charges, but officially this week, they said they are not pursuing the charges. James Jefferson returned to state police to work this week because they did their own independent investigation. But Hiller says when they wind up going to court for his next bond hearing, they'll put that into the court record, so it will officially be notated that we decline to pursue these charges.
I think it's May 5th. Have you heard from anyone at state police about this and how this could happen? Because being accused of domestic violence is a very serious thing.
So essentially what happened in this case was somebody was on the phone with a relative who was out of state. That relative believed they heard some things. That relative contacted law enforcement, which showed up at the scene. And as they were doing the investigation, that law enforcement agency was BRPD. BRPD, one of the officers believed that they needed to arrest Jefferson. So that's what happened.
Without probable cause.
As supervisors showed up, they were questioning, hey, look, is there a probable cause? And I'm told that that's also on the body camera. And there were concerns then, but he was arrested anyway. So essentially, when you think about it, he used a bail bondsman to post his bond, and so if he had used his own money, he'd be getting that money back because there's a declination of these charges. But as a result of the DA's office, asserting that there was no probable cause to arrest him and they're not going to pursue the charges, he's effectively out the money that he paid his bail bondsman because you don't get that money back when you go through a company.
He's the best in the business, no doubt about it. Chris Nakamoto, he told me off the air what he's working on for next week, but I'm not going to tease it for y'all. Maybe we'll get him to come back and talk with us. All right, back in just a moment to talk with a candidate for the House legislature. House District 67 has 40,998 souls, spanning about 23 and a half square miles. But the one thing it doesn't have right now is a House representative in the state legislature. But we'll fix that in a few weeks, and one of the candidates for that job is Terry Landry Jr. Many of you may recognize that name because his father is a piece of Louisiana history as the first African-American superintendent of the Louisiana State Police. So as I ask everybody who runs for office for the very first time, what is wrong with you? Why are you doing this? Why do you want this job?
That's an excellent way to put that. Let me tell you, first time I've ever heard it asked that way.
Yes, man. Let's cut right to the business.
Yeah, let's do it. No, listen, we have been at the legislature in some form or fashion for the past 16 years. Mm-hmm. I got my start with the Acadian Ambulance in 2009 during their legislative affairs and associate counsel. And so what we've seen and what we've been doing over those past 16 years is working for the people. I now currently serve as the policy director for a civil rights and social justice organization. And so we are always have been, and we're going to continue fighting for the people. I'm going to be at the Capitol anyway, and so we felt that now is our time to go in and try to make a difference from the inside, try to do some things and lend a voice to the voices that are already there, but be even a stronger voice for the people of the district and the people of Louisiana.
I took a look at your platform. Very nice website, by the way. There it is. Alyssa has it up on the screen. Let's talk a little bit about your platform, what you intend to do. You kind of alluded to it there, but what do you intend to do if 67 elects you?
The first thing we want to do is we want to go and support our children. And what I mean by that is we want to fully fund early childhood education. Mm-hmm. We believe that's the gateway to all of our issues, right? If you get the children in classrooms earlier, that broadens their bandwidth. Mm-hmm. We believe that will also close that gap before it even starts, right? And so we want to ensure that our children are taken care of. Pre-K-3 programs and things like that should be the standard, not just an option. And so that is one of the first things we want to do, and we want to intend to do that every session.
Why has it not been a priority?
I think
because the data is not new.
It's not.
You know?
It's not.
So why hasn't it been a priority?
I think that sometimes we get sidetracked by the big popular and you know the buzzwords that everyone wants to look at. Yeah. And we've had some legislators that have been champions for education, so it's been talked about. But we want to be able to bring all parties together. It should be a bipartisan issue. Mm-hmm. Who doesn't want better for their children?
That's right.
So who's going to stand up against it? So we're just going to go in there, try to build on those relationships that we built over the 16 years and really bring this thing to the forefront.
What about on the economy?
Look, the economy also starts with our children, right? But we also want to be able to not only start with early childhood, we want to do preventative methods, right? To ensure that once our children are in middle school and high school, that they have places to go, they have things to do that will keep them out of the system. But then we also want to be able to support our small and local businesses, which we believe are the backbone of the economy. Mm-hmm. We wanted them to be able to build and thrive here in Louisiana, in Baton Rouge. And so we want to make sure they have the resources that they need. But then also we want to see a thriving downtown. We want to see a thriving river center. We want to be able to bring entertainment and business to the district to ensure that our economy is not only thriving, but also safe.
You've done well in what you've done professionally, bachelor's degree, law degree, master's degree. Yes. When you're talking to young adults and you're trying to get them to marry themselves to success and opportunity, what advice would you give them? Because I think the median age of that district is like 35. Mm-hmm. So what do you tell younger adults?
Fight for your passion.
Yeah.
And everything will fall into place. And I had to learn that lesson the hard way. You know, you think about it, even going into when I started my education at LSU, my first thing was engineering because I thought, hey, big dollars, that's where the money is, right? But God has other plans, right? God's laughs at our plans all the time, right?
We could spend an hour talking about that.
Right. And so by the grace of God, he put me in a position where I was with the Acadian Ambulance, was only supposed to be there 6 months while I was studying for the bar. Didn't even realize they would need an attorney or a lobbyist. And after I passed the bar, they said, hey, we want you to stay and we want you to go down to the Capitol and, you know, use some of that personality and resources that we believe you can bring to the table, and I've been there ever since.
Where can people find info? Well, there's where people can find information about you. Tell them what that is.
That is www.terrylandryjr.com. That is my website. There you can go and find out our platform. You can also donate, but most importantly, you can volunteer.
Well, look, brother, that's solid. I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you so much.
Terry Landry Jr., candidate for House District 66. Only a few weeks away from that election day. They'll go out and vote. Back in just a moment. And here's where you can catch us. It streams every Friday on the app, WAFB.com, and on Friday nights, 7 o'clock. Saturdays, we're playing at 3. Well, Dr. Christianne Richard is here. She's actually going to be here next week to talk about a mental health event involving males. And so she'll have someone with her for that conversation. Today she's here for something that's kind of in context with that. Last weekend we were all kind of distantly and in some cases closely impacted by the suicide death of Kyron Lacey. Caught everybody by surprise. Someone so young who was in so much pain that he thought that was his only way out, and it is reflective of the growing number of young people who are taking their lives because of the pressure of life, and I wanted to talk with Dr. Richard about that. First up, are there obvious signs that you as a parent or as a friend or relative could see in someone that's moving in that direction?
Sometimes. Some of the signs can include just loss of sleep, loss of appetite, isolation, withdrawal, sometimes just loss of hope, somber, depression, things that, they just are not themselves anymore.
Yeah.
I think 988 is underutilized a lot of times for people. It's a simple, free resource. If you can't get in to see a counselor or, you can't talk to someone, 988 is always available.
Yeah.
And that's something that I push at all times.
What about the impact of social media on the psyche of a person? Not just young people, but people in general.
I think social media has created an environment or an atmosphere for people to lose their window of tolerance. Things that we could bounce back from or have hope that it was going to work out. I don't think people feel as hopeful anymore. And I think once you lose hope, you lose yourself in that.
Are there ways not to lose hope or ways to protect your mental peace when you're going through something? What are those?
Absolutely. In the case of Kyron, what we have is a person that lost their community, like overnight his life changed. And when you have such an event that disrupts the brain in that way, sometimes it goes beyond just thinking positive. It goes beyond just having a positive person to talk to. Sometimes you need a medical professional like a psychiatrist or your primary care physician to help stabilize the mood, because when you go through such a change as he went through, it literally changes the chemistry in the brain. So this is beyond talk therapy. This is beyond a pep talk.
Okay.
So when there's a chemical imbalance, talk therapy is not as effective.
What creates the chemical imbalance?
Sudden grief, like too much on the emotional despair. So when a person becomes emotionally despair, there's, we have our body, and our body is doing something as well, not just the emotions. So emotions is part of it, but your brain is trying to interpret all of the things that's happening. That is biological, physiological. So sometimes it's the combination of talk therapy and seeing a medical professional.
I think about these young people now, and I try to, even with my own kids, make them understand perspective. So many things push them down, and our perspective is different in that there are things that from generations before you wouldn't bat an eye at, but now it can devastate some young people. What's good advice to keep them motivated?
So yes, you are correct. The person's perception of the situation is what's communicating to them if they should have hope or not. And with social media and their environment, whatever that environment is at home, can aid in that. And so I would say for the young people that are living at home with their parents should help their children interpret situations properly and also model that behavior. And in terms of, all of us, being able to slow down, do some self-care, make sure we have good balance, good sleep hygiene, following up with our medical professionals, and also using 988 when we think about encouraging people to go to counseling, but sometimes we reach so many barriers in doing that, because as a mental health professional, I'm not always able to take new clients, and if I'm referring someone else out, they're not able to take new clients. But you have those other resources in between time to help bridge that gap.
Well, Doc is going to be back next week, as I said, to talk about a mental health event that's coming up for males. And, this town was triggered this week again by the shooting of that 3-year-old. And we're hopeful that he's going to recover from it. But like I said, Dr. Richard will be back next week. I can't wait to talk with you about your event coming up in a couple of weeks. Up next, an organization in New Orleans is actually investing in young men. And I'll introduce you to the founder in the next segment. And the next C-Suite features barbecued ribs. That's right. So those of us in Baton Rouge for maybe 3 years have been talking about the Inspiration Center, currently under construction at Howell Park, but in New Orleans. Since 2011, an organization called Son of a Saint has been impacting young men in the Crescent City. In fact, over 500 young men have been served by this great organization, and its founder, Sonny, is here with us, who has an amazing story. First up, why is it called Son of a Saint? It's a very obvious reason, but a great story.
My father played for the New Orleans Saints from 71 to 75. Unfortunately, passed away when I was 3 years old in 84, but that's why it's called Son of a Saint.
And let's talk about what the organization does, what the building does. I've been in the building a couple of times. I've met with you and your people. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, our building is a one-stop shop. It's a hub for our boys. You know, boys join around age 10 in Son of a Saint. They're with us till 21 years old. So our model is, we have a case team model where each boy is assigned a case manager, a mental health specialist, education coordinator, over 40, 50 activities a month, which are in our building and outside of our building as well. And so we follow those boys all the way through. You know, we're on the preventative side, but that building really is a safe space for our boys, and it's a place we have cook that comes, you know, provides meals 4 or 5 times a week. They can see their counselor, they can connect with their education coordinator, they connect with their peers, they're going to have some fun activities recreation-wise. So it's great for us, and it's been really a game changer.
There's a library there, and I know that the young men, when they get there from school, they can go up and pick a book and read and expand.
Absolutely.
Talk about what that safe space has been for some of these young men, because you've got a spectrum of ages.
We do, and like I said, the younger boys, they're really active, vibrant, running around. You know, those are the ones that make us smile and laugh so much when they first walk in the building. Usually outside, maybe playing basketball. But when they first come in, they put their backpack down, they get a snack, they check in with their case manager. Then they go to that specific activity. When they have a break, they can go, you know, have some fun, play ball, whatever. Then dinner's around 4:30. But yeah, I mean, we have a science lab, we have a library. We have open space, we have a theater, we have a gym, we have an aquarium that was donated by this company out of California, which has been great for us. It's huge and the boys love it.
There's a website.
There you go. We have a studio media in there where we can do podcasting and editing. We have an event space. So it's just great overall. What's interesting, our boys come from 90 different schools, 24 different zip codes. So we have to have a big logistics team too. So we have several drivers, vehicles, and that's the biggest challenge a lot of times with groups like ours, like mentorship groups that supporting kids, is getting them to and from services. So we really had to beef that up, and that's provided so much opportunity for our boys because we're able to grab them and bring them to our home.
Sonny's here on business, and I really wanted him to come and talk because I'd like to catalyze more efforts like yours and what we're doing here to get people to understand, A, it's possible.
Absolutely.
But then know that it already exists here. We're doing something here, you've done something there. What would be your advice to both the philanthropist and the community person who wants to do something like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the community person, definitely shadow a group that's a shadow a leader or other organizations. I think one of the problems I always see is folks want to support thousands of kids like that, right? Without having a true program, without having gone through it. I even did that early on when I first started. I wanted to help so many kids, and my play uncle, who had a NORD rec center in New Orleans, he said, just help one. And then we just started grassroots, right? And just started building that up. So for me, it's really just taking your time, finding a mentor in the space, number one. I think for a philanthropist, you know, trust philanthropy. You know, folks that support us don't tell us how to do the work. Right. They really trust and believe us.
They just cut the checks.
Well, yeah, I mean, they support us, a different program, our camps that we do over the summer outside New Orleans. They might want to sponsor education in school for kids. So, I mean, food, snacks, you name it, but they trust us, right? And so we really, really value the funds where we can put them to use best as we know how.
I really want you to support this organization with dollars. And look, you can go to the website and learn the story about how Sonny built all this. It is an amazing building. I was so excited because it got me excited about what we're doing back here, man. Son of a Saint, there is a website. You can make donations. You can, you know, Sonny's story is amazing because you took something that could have been tragic and turned it into purpose and have impacted all these young men. So lunch in the big city, brother?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, look, and I love what you're doing out here,
Thank you, man.
And I look forward to partnering and trying to help more kids.
Let's do it. Let's do it. All right. So look, coming up in a few days is an Earth Day celebration. There is the graphic for it. Thomasina is here with us to tell us about what's happening at Earth Day. You know, we do a couple of events here in Baton Rouge around Earth Day. So what you got going on the, was it 22nd? 27th?
27th.
What's going on?
Earth Day is being revitalized. It's been on a hiatus for 6 years.
Yep.
We are bringing it back to downtown Baton Rouge. We're going to have vendors, food trucks. The ask of the food trucks is that they use eco-friendly or compostable containers instead of their regular plastic and styrofoam. We're going to have a couple of schools to showcase some of the work that they're doing around recycling and sustainability. And we're just going to have different vendors out there to show different sustainability efforts and things that you can use, such as electrical vehicles, solar generators. So just to kind of give the community some options as it relates to sustainability.
Are you at capacity with vendors, or are you still looking for vendors?
We wanted to kind of have everything finalized at least by the end of business today so that we can map out the layout so that we can see where everybody's going to be placed and get the run of show together.
So how can, it's a free event?
It is a free event. It is a family friendly event as well. We do have on our Eventbrite, we also have on our flyer that we have, the QR codes where you can scan to volunteer, become a vendor, or even sponsor.
Should be some good weather. Y'all get out there. I might even pull up on you. You got food out there, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Earth Day ceremony on the 27th. You saw the graphic there. You can go to Eventbrite to learn more about it and go enjoy the weekend. Speaking of the weekend, y'all have a very pleasant Easter weekend and don't eat too much crawfish. See you next week.